we need to record this. This is the neighborhood community of practice. The whole reason that we have this neighborhood learning community is that we want to make sure that we have a space so that people who are working to support neighborhoods can get together and share their experiences, discuss challenges and successes related to the neighborhood work, and learn together and develop that network of peers. Because it's so great when you can come to somebody, hey, have you done this? Have you tried doing something along this lines? And to be able to share and do that networking, that's what we aim to do. So that's why we are gathered in this space. This is why we have these conversations. Okay, so we're just gonna do a quick round. I think we have time. We're gonna try and do this as quickly as we can. So you've got about 30 seconds max. We're gonna run through just to see who's on the call today. We started the conversation around like what activities you've been doing, because I was talking about my bike earlier, but if you can give us your name, your location, so where you are today, the organization you're with, and one word to describe your summer so far. So I'll go for those of you I haven't met yet. My name is Glenda. I am with the Tamarack Institute. I am currently in Salmon Arm, British Columbia. For those of you who don't know, I'm halfway between Vancouver and Calgary. One word to describe my summer is biking. That's my summer. I'm gonna go to Heather.
Hi guys, my name is Heather Sweetnam. Thanks for including me in this community of practice. I'm excited to be here. I live in Sylvan Lake, Alberta. I just started a community development position a few months ago, so I'm working on doing some neighborhood work. So just excited to be a part of this. And one word to describe my summer, pleasant.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Heather. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Christine.
I'm Christine Vandenberg. I'm in Calgary with the City of Calgary. And one word to describe my summer is hectic. There's been a lot of funding opportunities going out to community groups, so trying to figure out how to get that money out the door has been interesting. Thanks.
Thanks. Elise.
Hi everyone, my name is Elise and I'm here in Vancouver and I work at Kawasa Neighborhood House, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Glad to know that this exists. One word to describe my summer, I think, is nature.
Nature. Great. Kimberly.
Good morning. My name's Kimberly. I live in City Victoria. I work for the City of Victoria. And one word to describe my summer is gardening.
Great. Marilyn.
Hi, my name is Marilyn. I'm now in Gatineau, Quebec. I had been working for the Coasters Association on the Lower North Shore, so I moved 2,500 kilometers away from what I had called home. I'm currently looking for work, and my summer word would be transitional.
Transitional, lots of big stuff happening. Great. Well, thanks for joining us even from your new location. That's great. Tanya.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanya. I'm calling from Kelowna, BC. I work for the City of Kelowna, and one word to describe my summer is active.
Active. Great. Thanks for being here. Irene.
Hi everyone, my name is Irene Sue. I'm actually from Markham, Ontario, but I'm located in Edmonton right now, working for the Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues. And a word to describe my summer, maybe fruitful. There's a lot of new things going on, but also a lot of work to do. So it's pretty exciting though. So,
great. Stephen. I see you have written in the chat box that you're from London, Ontario, with the Friends of Urban Agriculture London. And your word is pandemonia. That's a great word. Tells us a lot about how your summer is going. Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm with the City of Burlington Recreation Service area, and I oversee sport and neighborhood development areas. So my word is connections. I've been making tons of different connections through virtual that I probably would have not made otherwise.
Interesting, that's great. Thanks, Jennifer. Melody.
Hi, good morning. I'm Melody Monroe, and I'm located in Burnaby. I work for Fraser Health, and I'm going to say complex. My summer is very complex.
Okay, I see a lot of nodding going around. People can resonate, apparently. Great. Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kirsten in Edmonton, Alberta. I am kind of doing consulting, except for that I'm not doing very much of it right now. But my area of focus has been really on supporting communities and navigating usually difficult change. And my word is time blind.
Time blind. That's a good one. I'm so delighted. I am going to say Kirsten, for some reason, ended up on our internal staff list within for a while. And so I had to send her an email and say, who are you? And did you know that you're getting all these random emails? So I'm so delighted to meet you, Kirsten. That's great. Thanks for joining us. So I'm gonna actually, Christine, do you want to go?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Christine Haddicle. I'm based in Nelson, British Columbia, and I work with Tamarack. I'm on Glenda's team with the city's deepening community team, and I also work with the city's reducing poverty team. I split my time half-half between deepening community work and poverty reduction work.
Great, thanks, Christine. And Deborah, I'm going to let you introduce yourself later, but do you have one word for summer?
Did Christine give a word for summer?
Oh, Christine.
My word is gardening. We tripled our garden in size. It's almost half an acre now, and that's all I do in my free time.
Great.
I think I realized it's half an acre. Wow. Deborah.
My name is Deborah. I'm from the city of Edmonton, and I work in the Abundant Community Edmonton program. And I love gardening, but the word I think I'd pick is home, because it's been a rediscovery since March with the word home. So, Glenda, did you want to add anything else?
No, what a great word. Thanks, Deborah. I think we can go to the next slide. And I am just so delighted. So Deborah has been doing some really interesting work with the city of Edmonton, as they've been looking, like we've all been wrestling with COVID-19, and we've been so busy looking at response. And now we're starting to go, okay, things are shifting and we're transitioning right now to this new phase, and we're looking at this as a recovery phase. And so at the city of Edmonton, they are looking at this, but what does it mean? What does recovery mean? And how do we make sure that these things that we've been learning and seeing community really take the lead in, how do we keep that as we move towards recovery? So that's why we've asked Deborah to come and to talk more about that. And she recently, I don't know if any of you were able to take in any of the sessions of the unconference, the ABCD International Unconference, but she presented there, and I just thought, this is something that we can really use in our neighborhood work, in our neighborhood learning community. So I asked her to come and to speak, and she agreed, so yay for us. So I'm going to turn it over to Deborah to take us through what they're doing at the City of Edmonton, and then we'll have a chance to probably move into some breakout groups and discuss what it looks like in our communities as well. I'll turn it over to you, Deborah.
Great, thanks so much, Glenda. I really appreciate the invitation to come and chat a bit today. And I actually think the conversation we have after will be the most exciting part. So I think a lot of people know about Abundant Community Edmonton, so I won't go too deep into it today. Just to say that it's a grassroots initiative that kind of started in 2015. And we focus really on the neighbor to neighbor relationship. And what's interesting to always point out that is that I think in North America, you know, we've become really disconnected, and we always think that a good neighbor is someone who we never hear from and we don't talk to and they're quiet. And, you know, in Edmonton, we're really trying to change that. We're trying to say, no, a good neighbor is someone you know their name. You know, they don't have to be your friend or your family member, but they should be someone that you relate with and talk with once in a while. So we focus really on place-based, asset-based community development, kind of at that grassroots level. And, you know, for Marilyn, I encourage you, because you've moved to a new place, we look at the human scale. So we want a neighborhood of around 2,000 to 5,000 dwellings or households. And we consider a block, just so everyone kind of sees what it means, to be about 20 houses on a floor or in a building. So I encourage you, Marilyn, to try to connect your floor if you can. So if we could just jump to the next slide. If you look at the picture that you'll see it in the next slide, it shows kind of a little photograph of how we focus our work. Now, we think every neighborhood is different, so there is no one way to do this. It's going to happen differently in every neighborhood. But what we do try to do is really focus a little bit on looking for neighborhood leadership and a support team. So neighborhood leadership can look like a few things. In Edmonton, we have community associations. Irene's actually on the umbrella group. She works for the umbrella group. So we'll work with those community associations to find neighborhood leadership, but we'll also use things like Nextdoor, right? Nextdoor has Nextdoor leads. We'll use Facebook. We'll look for leadership and support teams and try to find individual block connectors who are really interested in connecting their block. And then we give them tools and resources, and we do new participant workshops to try to coach people on how they can connect their floor, their neighborhood, their block, and then their whole neighborhood. If you want more info, really just go online to the City of Edmonton, Abundant Community Edmonton, and these books are there and they can help you out. And we're more than willing to chat with anybody, anytime about Abundant Community. So on the next slide, I'm going to start chatting a little bit about, you know, what happened with COVID. So when COVID happened in mid-March, the majority of city staff began working from home, those who could, and we all had perspectives on pandemic, right? So, you know, the crisis, the shutdown started, and a lot of people felt that it was this crisis where they weren't sure what to do or how to keep their blocks connected. And my team really knew, you know, people are going to be self-isolated, told to stay home, stay 2 meters apart. And it's kind of difficult to get people to connect with their neighbors when that's happening. So our perspective was, how do we get people to connect? And if Christine can go to the next slide, it just demonstrates that a lot of other people really thought that connecting wasn't as important as possibly the economy. So you know, at ACE, we were thinking, how do we get people to connect? But a lot of people were like, oh no, the economy. And what we really saw come out of the beginning, and I'm sure all of you saw this challenge, was, you know, we want people to be connected because we began to see isolation and the stressors people were dealing with, like loneliness, managing childcare, managing work, all of this from one home. And in the end, we came to a place where we thought, you know, both perspectives are important. And I think we see this, that, you know, you can't manage daily life without managing your basic needs. But then, you know, we're all starting to open up again because of the economy. So if we go just to the next slide, I'll chat a little bit about Edmonton and what we started to see there. And it's interesting, some of the most fascinating initial work, you know, didn't come out of the city, of course. Where did it come from? Citizens. So an organization called the John Humphrey Center for Human Rights. The executive director there is really a community-minded person named Renee. And not as her organization, but as herself, and, you know, linked to the org, she started YAG Community Response to COVID-19 on Facebook, and they now have over 20,000 followers, and that happened pretty quickly. And what we really saw were random acts of kindness. So this is wonderful, wonderful random acts of kindness. The picture on the left is this food distribution box in the park. On the far right, we saw that people in restaurants started creating meals for pickup, trying to meet those basic needs. And then the picture in the middle is just my favorite. It says this random box of carrots that are available for anyone who would like some carrots. So I just kind of love that picture. And so they really did a lot of good in the city. And so ACE neighborhoods, we started hearing from them a lot. So we have 61 active neighborhoods, which means quite a few block connectors doing something, and 76 initiating. That's out of about a 260 neighborhoods. So we're about a third of the way he's kind of doing something with ACE. And we really saw that in our initiative, a lot of people had already connected their block. So they were doing check-ins. They were doing it from an asset-based community development way where everyone was important and everyone was contributing. And then we had a whole bunch of new people pop up saying, how can we connect our blocks? So they created those things like the drop-off cards and the phone lists, everything we all know about. But it really caused us to start thinking about how do we, quoting Cormac Russell, how do we move from being, serving the needy with random acts of kindness to everyone being needed and everyone being able to contribute. And so this is about the same time when the city started to think about recovery and reimagining the city. So what can we do differently? And, I wouldn't say citywide. We're all thinking about reimagining citywide. I would think ACE services is really thinking about how can we put citizens at the center. And we're trying to communicate that message to our colleagues. So we're going to look at acts of kindness at that block level. So if we slide over to the next slide to the next slide, that's awesome. We really moved from random acts of kindness to how do we get to organized acts of kindness. So with organized acts of kindness, I would just like to acknowledge the film The Great Disconnect by Tamer Solomon. He actually allowed us to use this little slide, and if we have time, maybe later, Brenda, I do have the whole little film. I probably should have shared it with you earlier. But really what this talks about is social capital. How do we build social capital? And so at the neighborhood, we started focusing with our ACE folks and our new people. We had a ton of new people just pop out of the woodwork through all kinds of advertising we did on Facebook, on Nextdoor, and through YAG Community Response for new participant workshops, where we really had people talking about, I want to build social capital in my block, and just focusing on that. So the goal of moving from a random act of kindness to an organized act of kindness was building that long-term social capital on the block level. So, driving food, and you don't know Edmonton, but I guess Maryland's neighborhood's a good area. If you're driving food from Gatineau across the border to Ottawa, it's not really that far. But you're not building that social capital. What you're building is food delivery and random acts of kindness that have no long-term bonds. And our goal was to work with YAG Community Response to say, how can we try to work smaller and build those organized acts of kindness on the block where everyone's included and everyone can contribute. So from this came actually some storytelling that we've been doing. Our neighborhoods have been doing it, of course, on their own. And then we also came to celebrating Neighbor Day. So a post came out from Tamarack, actually, and all my team said, we've always wanted to do Neighbor Day. Let's finally do it. So we did Neighbor Day on June 20th. We aligned it with Calgary. So we saw that Calgary did their Neighbor Day, Christine, on June 20th. And we thought, it would just make sense for us to provincially align the work that we do. So if we could go to the next slide, because I don't want to talk too much. I'd really rather get into the meat of it. We went to our neighborhoods who were interested and asked just some key questions, because it doesn't matter in some ways what the city says, but it's what do citizens say about recovery and reimagining how we can be more abundant and be more connected going forward. And our citizens came back to us and said, really, we found that natural connectors just emerged. So if we didn't have people formally connected through the ACE system, there were all these natural folks on the block who connected. Many of them went on Nextdoor. And if you know Nextdoor at all, there's a little help box. And they began, you could sign up to help people in your neighborhood. So that started happening. And they found new ways to connect through social media and other apps. And then they found that they just started collaborating with each other a lot more. So even before the city thought of it, neighborhoods were really putting citizens at the center. And they were using an asset-based community development perspective to take responsibility for the neighborhood and to care for each other. So it had gone from residents really being consumers but actually participants in the well-being and care of their neighborhood. So we found that that occurred a lot, and we also found that we began to collaborate with more and more organizations. Ones we already had ties with, like John Humphrey Center, we really started working with their group, YEG COVID response, and finding a way to make that happen more formally. And I'll just go to the next final slide, where this is really when we ask the question of citizens, you know, what did it look like in your neighborhood, and how are you putting citizens at the center? And so what they were doing is they were meeting and helping people nearby, and they figured it out. They didn't really need a ton of guidance, and they were sharing and exchanging goods and services. I have a couple great stories here. They were helping each other garden while being socially distanced. They were all following Alberta Health Service guidelines. They were exchanging puzzles. They were sharing sourdough starter. A bunch of neighborhoods started up Buy Nothing groups. And we also found, I found one person, the local economy was affected. Someone had a mountain of little strawberries sprouting up in their backyard, and their daughter went outside, boxed them all up, and there was a shortage of strawberries in some of the greenhouses. She made like $300 off of strawberries. I just think it's the greatest story ever, because she probably needed the money the way the economy was going. They started to take care of common green spaces. So the city, to save funds, cut back on cutting grass, and citizens banded together, realizing, why do we all have a lawnmower? Why does our block have 15 lawnmowers? And they all went out in turns and cut the park grass so they could still meet in the park while being socially distanced. They did, of course, a lot of recreation in the park, physically distanced. We saw some of that actually being put on TV. A few of them were ACE community groups, and we could share those if anyone was interested. People started to create neighborhood plans for how they might go forward. They realized they really needed to connect at the block level and create that connected list for future crises. And when I say crisis, I don't just mean, in the document created by Tamarack recently, Glenda can share the title with us later, but it talks about looking at crisis and recovery in neighborhoods. It's not just that big crisis of having a COVID pandemic, it's that little crisis. Somebody breaks their leg, you know, someone ends up having cancer. What do you do, and how do you band together to take care of each other when people might not be that close access friends or family? So we really found, and this is what we heard from our ACE neighborhoods, is that neighbors will be there post-pandemic if we organize do organized acts of kindness. And they also found that COVID-19 helped them create grassroots responses and relationships that created and strengthened the social capital they already had within their neighborhood. So what we think it might look a little bit more like in the future is a little bit less reliance on the municipality and citizens building that neighborhood more the way they want it to be built. From there, I hope we can have some exciting conversation. And if there's time later, we can share that video, Glenda.
That's great, Deborah. And I will look for that resource to be able to share it. But can you tell me just a little bit more about how the city of Edmonton is maybe contemplating moving forward with this knowledge?
Sure. Yeah, I think what the city has done is they have a reimagine phase right now. Until September, every department is reimagining how their work can be done. So they've been doing blue skying documents. And what neighborhood services has been trying to do is influence that blue sky to put citizens more at the center of recovery. So we have a city manager right now who's an acting city manager. And he put out, like before he had a big meeting for the whole city, he actually put out the ability for us to submit questions. And I put in a question that was, how can we look to put citizens at the center of recovery? Because it will be more successful. And he responded to that saying, you know, it's something we're thinking about related to citizens at the center and volunteerism, right? So I think the city is considering it. I know neighborhood services is really looking at it, and ACE is becoming more central to the work of neighborhood services. So that will be shifting the way we do our work. We had many neighborhood resource coordinators, and we actually see our work being more focused in different ways. Have the decisions been made? No, but the city is open to conversations and rethinking. I believe the city of Edmonton was also one of the first cities. Not everything we do is fantastic, but I do think we at least held open public meetings around the defund the police. How do we restructure that conversation? The outcome or what they've done, I really have no comment, but the ability to even open it up for conversation and discussion, the city is open to that. So I feel like now is a big time of shift and possible change for some cities. And for any advice for people who work with municipalities, I feel the key is you have to have citizens talk to elected officials about how important it is to put citizens at the center of recovery. So the citizens need to do that, because administration, our responsibility is to just get the administration above us to think that way also. I hope that's helpful.
Yep, that's great. Thank you. So Christine, can you share your screen again and go back to the first question that was posed?
Maybe what some of the challenges were?
Well, because I kind of want to talk about, like, as we break out into breakout sessions, I'm really curious around this conversation of, so what was it that was really unique that happened in your communities that citizens led? And as you move back into, or not back, but as you move into the recovery phase, how are you, or how can you continue to support the work of citizens rather than, because I think sometimes it's tempting, or we fall back into, especially for those working in municipalities, the bureaucracy kind of sometimes steps in and squishes that. I don't know if that's the
Definitely.
right word, but we have red tape that then we work within. So how do we continue to put citizens at the center? How do we, I like that word around reimagining. So I guess the question is, what is it that you saw that was really unique, and how can you continue to support that moving forward?
Sure. So Melanie asked my position, and it's project manager for Abundant Community. It's just, if I type, I'll look distracted. So how do we continue to do it? So I think because it's really a grassroots organizing piece. We have some really strong neighborhoods. So I go to Belgravia and Windsor Park, where they went from 0 to 25 block connectors in like 2 weeks. So if the neighborhood is inspired, and we use a million things to inspire them, the Great Disconnect film for one thing, it helps inspire people to get connected. But if they get inspired and get connected and really start talking to each other at the block level, not just the neighborhood level, because the neighborhood level sometimes tends to be a smaller group of people, right? Where the block level will be more people spread out across the whole neighborhood, so you're getting the vibe of everyone. If they have the power to talk to elected officials and say that, this is what we think is important, you have to bring it up to that level, I think, to make it happen. And this is where Edmonton's lucky in the sense that two things: we have a very dedicated group of people who are neighborhood resource coordinators. There were about 40 of them and 60 people in our whole section who just work with neighborhoods. So like one neighborhood resource coordinator would have between 6 and 12 neighborhoods. So they're very connected to the people who live in that neighborhood. And then we also have community associations, right? And they might not be in every neighborhood. It might be like 5 neighborhoods has one community association, but they also have the ability to talk to administration and to council to try to say, this is how we think things should happen. I think we're lucky because our city is trying to reimagine how we provide services. Some cities may just say, let's only do essential services, and Edmonton could end up there. Who knows? But I feel because of all the plans we have written, like our city plan, there's another document called Connected Edmonton, which doesn't have pictures of bridges and buildings in it. It actually has pictures of people, which I think is telling. Because those plans were recently written, I think there's some desire to look at change. So I just think we have a lot of citizens who are really organized and know that they want to be part of recovery. Did that help, Glenda?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to hear what is true in the other communities as well. Melody had a question for you, Deborah. Another one. Are neighborhood resource coordinators paid or do they work for the city?
Yeah, their neighborhood resource coordinators work for the city. And so they're full-time staff who work with many, many organizations in their neighborhoods. And then we also have neighborhood connectors who are people, citizens. They are not paid generally. Sometimes there's a little grant through the province of Alberta for that person, but the majority of neighborhood resource coordinators aren't paid.
Okay, great. So I guess there's these two questions that we can kind of look at. Again, because we've heard now from Edmonton, from the city of Edmonton, around what does it look like for citizens to be at the center of this, like reimagining what an abundant, caring, connected community looks like going forward. What does that look like? What does that mean in your community? That's the first question that I'm hoping you will kind of take a look at in your small groups. And then the next one, Christine, if you could go to the next page, is what does it look like? So what are some of the things you've seen? And then how can that stay alive? Is that clear? Does anybody have any questions? So what we're going to do is break you up into small groups. There'll be 3 groups just to dive deeper into this conversation so you can chat about what's happening in your communities.
Sure. And can you repeat the question just one more time, Glenda? I might want to write it down.
Well, it keeps changing every time because that's what I do. I always change the question. But basically it's how can, like, in each person's context, how can you be supportive? How can you reimagine the role of community? And what are some of the things that you saw community doing? And how can you support it within your role, within your organization? Yeah. Okay. Any questions before we jump into groups? Okay.
How long are we in groups for?
We'll be about 10 minutes. And then make sure you assign somebody to be your reporter. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I think it was a great discussion. We really are running short on time because I like discussion to go long. But we have somebody from each group, and whoever gets to go gets to share the one nugget that they pulled out of the conversation. So group 1, who would like to share the nugget that they pulled out of the conversation? Does anybody know which group number they were in? So group 1, I believe, was with, I know Christine was in group 1.
Which Christine?
You.
Oh, okay. We just talked a lot about changes in funding, whether or not funding and budgets were being cut or not to support neighborhood activities, and how there were lots of random and organized acts of kindness, but that those priorities of those groups of people were not necessarily being connected with municipal priorities in recovery planning. So while there's lots of feel-good stuff happening on the ground, it doesn't mean that priorities from the ground are making it into recovery plans, or that conversation is happening. So that's a problem.
Okay. Thank you. And then the group that I got to pop into, who would like to share their nugget?
Okay, it's Melody. I'll jump in. So I was the one asking the question about how do you move from professionalization of, community connections to neighborhood level. And so I heard things like, in order to start co-creating, kind of get everyone in the group to be intentional about who do they know that they could bring in, and so I thought that was kind of a good suggestion. And then I heard things like City of Calgary is quite intentional with their granting program. And I know City of Burnaby has community grants. I'm just not sure that they're as focused as some of the ones I heard about with Edmonton and Calgary, and then Christine was talking about having community brokers, and so I think it's sort of more reimagining or being intentional or something like that, which sounds great. Not sure how I'm going to do it, but it sounds great.
That's awesome. Thank you. And group 3. Oh, Deborah, we can't hear you.
Nugget.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now we can.
Yeah. Well, we were in group 3. It's a little bit more than one nugget. But I know with Burlington, they started a play lending library, and they have a community support fund, which has been enhancing the role of the community. In Vancouver, there was a massive realization, neighborhoods, we never know what you do. And then all of a sudden, wow, it's a valuable social structure. So that was really exciting. And they've been doing neighborhood small grants, which has been really helpful. In Florida, where Keisha's from, there's still some uncertainty there because the epicenter has kind of moved to that area, and she's in South Florida. So they've been focusing on things like food security, childcare, unemployment, how this is a disproportionately affected people of color. And then the youth have been active in their own spaces, and they've been supporting that. So that sounded really exciting. And then with Marilyn in Gatineau, she's just been soaking up the information and looking and wanting ways to build this into her new work when she finds it.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is awesome. Okay, there's lots of resources being shared in the chat too, so when you get a chance, go check that out. I do want to go back. Christine is on it. We're gonna just send out a poll really quick. If you can let us know how we did. Our purpose was to make sure that that the session was useful, that we presented a concept or something that you might try or that one of your peers did during the breakout session, and that hopefully you made a connection with a peer. All right, I'm gonna give you 10 more seconds. Great, thank you, everybody. It looks like we did what we came to do. That's awesome. Thank you. 2 big things we want to chat about. One, so Deborah is she's really busy. We keep her busy around here at Tamarack. Next week, next Tuesday at the same time, she's going to be presenting this alongside Jonathan Massamy from the City of Kitchener. He's put together an asset-based recovery framework. And so they're going to be co-presenting during a webinar next week as just thinking about how do we do this. So if you enjoyed today's session, you want to dive a little deeper, that's what that opportunity will do. So we'll send out a link to it. I do encourage you to register for it. I think it will be a really interesting discussion, and we'll provide that next level of theory to go along with this conversation that we had today. And then a little bit of news. So I have been leading this community of practice for a while now, but Christine, who is here, she is the lucky one who is going to be taking over. So if you have any comments or questions or ideas for next communities of practice or topics that you'd like to see covered, send her an email. And I'm so delighted. I don't know, Christine, if you have any words that you'd like to share at this time, but.
I have to hop onto another community of practice, so I unfortunately have to hop off this call, but I'm looking forward to being with you all. So please do send me your thoughts and ideas on what would be most useful in our time together for future calls. Look forward to getting to know you all.
Awesome. And I will continue to show up here. Great. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great call.
Thank you, Glenda. Glad to hear you're not just stepping away.
That's not my plan.
Thanks for organizing this. Appreciate it.
It's awesome. Thank you.